2015 was a banner year for video games, but this year is shaping up to be even better. In today's episode, we're counting down our most anticipated games of 2016. Today is Monday, January 11th, 2016, and you're listening to the 1P versus 2P podcast. I'm Taylor Ray. With me, as always, is my brother and co-host, Ryan Ray. Let's get started by saying Happy New Year. 2015 is now over. We gave out all our Game of the Year awards. Go back a couple episodes if you haven't listened to those. But that year's over. Let's talk about this year. And we're really excited to talk about a lot of these games that have already been announced to come out this year, 2016. So let's get right to it. Let's start off with Overwatch. This is a multiplayer shooter by Blizzard. Ryan, you excited to play this one?
Yeah, this game looks a lot like a crossover between Team Fortress 2 and a MOBA style game. There are about 16 characters, 4 different kinds of roles. There's a tank role, there's like an assassin role, there's a support role, and I forget the 4th role. But there was a beta for this game not too long ago, and it looked very, very promising. Looks like a promising follow-up to the Team Fortress 2 style team shooter mechanics. It looks very colorful, has a very cartoony art style that I think I can get into. And, Blizzard seems to have a great track record with launching MOBAs with Heroes of the Storm. They just got StarCraft 2 off their backs. And this title looks very promising.
Right, I really trust them now. I think they're really embracing sort of the esports model, but have been very successful with Heroes of the Storm, so they're going to build off of that success, really, in my opinion. And for them to enter the shooter space with like a hero-style game should be very interesting. I'm very much looking forward to it. Originally, people were just expecting this game to come out on PC only, but now it's been confirmed that they're having console versions too. So for PS4 and Xbox One, we're expecting this sometime in the first or second quarter of 2016. And we don't have a definitive date yet, but I'm sure more info to come from Blizzard very soon, seeing as how it's already January. Okay, let's move on to, I know this is a game that you're really excited about. This is XCOM 2.
Right, this is the turn-based sequel to XCOM Enemy Unknown. Of course, if you've played that game, that was probably the game of the year that came out in. It's currently scheduled for release in February, so not too far away, February 5th. They've already announced a season pass. We don't know what that DLC won't quite entail. It does have Steam Workshop support, and they've said that there won't be any controller support at launch, or for that matter, console versions. Right now, this is only being released for the PC.
I don't know if there were a lot of complaints about the console versions from XCOM 1, but I thought they ran pretty well, in my opinion. Did you play it on PC originally, or did you play it on console before?
I played it on PC, and then eventually when they released the iOS version, I played it on there too. What a great game. Probably one of my favorite games of the last decade, and I can't wait to play the sequel. I'm very, very excited for this game.
If you're a fan of any kind of strategy, tactics games, this is a really punishing franchise, it seems. XCOM 2 hopefully is going to build upon the success of the previous one. That would be Enemy Unknown and Enemy Within, which was a standalone expansion. All right, this is a franchise that has taken a huge break. Let's talk about Gran Turismo Sport. Ryan, I know you've played these ones in the past.
Yes, I've played both Gran Turismo 5, Gran Turismo 6. I'm an old Gran Turismo fan back from Gran Turismo 3 A-Spec. This game was announced at Paris Games Week not too long ago. It's said not to be a numbered Gran Turismo, which I'm not sure what that means, but it is the 13th game in the series. These games typically take a long time to develop. They have a lot of attention to detail, a lot of car sounds, a lot of real car models that they have to develop. This game supposedly has PSVR support. We're not sure what that entails. Probably will be a cockpit view of driving. Of course, this is a racing game. Currently scheduled for the second half of 2016, but I expect this game to be delayed quite a bit.
Is there really even a market for these really heavy simulation racing games anymore? You've seen what's happened to Project Cars lately. That was a disaster. Are people instead wanting racing games that have a more arcade style to it, more like a Forza Horizon or a Need for Speed?
I think simulation-style racing games definitely have an audience, but it's definitely a very niche audience. I'm not. Gran Turismo is probably the granddaddy of all these kinds of games, and definitely one that people really look to for this style of racing game. With games like Mario Kart really taking the racing genre by storm, and Forza Horizon and the more arcade-style type games, I'm not sure where Gran Turismo fits in this day and age, but I'm really curious to see what it will look like. It will certainly be a beautiful game if it indeed comes out for PS4.
I think for the time being, folks are really just playing Forza Motorsport, those numbered series, instead of Gran Turismo all this time. But we'll see if it'll actually come out this year. We know these games take a while to develop, and wouldn't be surprised if it was delayed into next year. But this is a huge, huge game. Let's move on to the Final Fantasy VII Remake, which, if you were paying attention at the PlayStation Experience not too long ago, at that keynote, they showed some footage of that game, and it is drastically different from what we expect out of a Final Fantasy RPG, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it's said to be, the structure of it's said to be episodic. The footage shown at PlayStation Experience was just the first episode. The gameplay looks like it's going to be a blend of the active time battle system from the original release, blended with the Kingdom Hearts style action and commands. This will be kind of more fast-paced role-playing game. No announced date, but the developers have said that each episode is said to have, quote, a full game's worth of content. Now, if you remember, Final Fantasy VII is like a 100-hour long RPG that people really can't expect in this day and age to be of very high caliber. Very few RPGs come out like that on the scale of Final Fantasy style games. And I'm really confused as a big fan of the Final Fantasy series in general and of Final Fantasy VII specifically. I'm very curious to see what this will turn out to be like. It looks very promising. The voice acting looks a little shaky, but I really like the Kingdom Hearts style gameplay. So if I have to take that with new Final Fantasy VII, I'll take it all.
I feel like this is a feast or famine situation because this game was announced out of absolutely nowhere at E3 this past summer. And the fervor, like the fan reaction for Final Fantasy VII was like nothing I'd ever seen before. I have to admit, I really bought into the hype myself, not knowing anything about this game besides that little cinematic teaser trailer that they put out there. And I'm very, I'm conflicted about this news so far because it is very different. I like that they're doing an update to the game, but you can tell that this is going to be a situation where they're either going to anger all the old hardcore fans of the original game by making it something completely different. You know, it's no longer this classic turn-based system. It almost looks like a Dirge of Cerberus. It looks very similar to that style of gameplay, in addition to Kingdom Hearts, like you said before. And it's going to come down to how they execute this on, especially with episodes. I mean, with that announcement, that really angered a lot of people already so far. Now we're going to get this game piecemeal. And I don't know. I'm very cautious.
I'm very concerned about the game's price. When you say Dirge of Cerberus, that's not a positive connotation. That game was terrible. If this game does have a full game's worth of content and each episode is priced accordingly, I'm very worried for the future of this game. I hope it'll be like a downloadable title, like other games that have kind of the season style structure. Maybe $15, maybe $20 at the most for each episode, but this game, for me, it can't disappoint even if it turns out to be very expensive.
I think it's going to be very divisive between the people that are purists and want to maintain the same experience and the people who want something brand new, because you can't make that same game in 2016. It's not going to fly. And Final Fantasy VII back in the day made PlayStation what it was. It really did. I think before then, Sony was sort of lagging behind Nintendo in that console war between them and the N64. And I have to say that Final Fantasy VII really caught on with Western audiences and really opened up a new market for Japanese RPGs to come and thrive ever since then. So it's interesting to see that this is something completely new, a completely new take on this. It's a reboot, really. It's not so much a remake, in my opinion. Okay, enough about Final Fantasy. Let's talk about a new Kickstarter game that was successful, but it came really down to the wire to meet its goal. This is Indivisible. This is an RPG from the makers of this cult fighting game Skullgirls.
Right, Indivisible looks like a stylistic take on Valkyrie Profile with a Metroidvania-style world. If you've never played Valkyrie Profile, this is kind of a very hardcore role-playing game where you play as a character. You try to recruit characters on your team, and each character is assigned to a button, and you try in combat, you try to set up combos with these characters. They all have different ranged weapons, and a very, very interesting game from PS1 era. It had a sequel on the PS2, and there was a port on the DS, a very niche title. Indivisible looks very promising. I was certainly a big fan of Skullgirls. I really like the art style of that game, and I'm a little more unsure about the Valkyrie Profile style influence on this game, but we'll see. It looks very, very promising. And this game is currently being targeted for 2017. It was just kickstarted at the end of this past year.
What I also think is interesting is that the developer Lab Zero is collaborating with other indie developers. Like, there are characters for the campaign that include Shovel Knight, Guacamelee, Skullgirls. These are characters that have been in other games and are now going to be in this game. And I love to see that kind of thing. I love to see crossovers, and especially with indie titles. There seems to be this strong sense of camaraderie and collaboration amongst them. And I can't wait to check this game out. As an action RPG, when you talk about Valkyrie Profile and Super Metroid, Castlevania, a blend of all those together, it's a very interesting premise. I can't wait to check it out. And if you don't know what we're talking about, check out the Indiegogo page because there are some great teaser trailers and talks and discussions about what this game actually is. Okay, let's move on to Dishonored 2. This is the stealth action sequel to very successful Bethesda game Dishonored. And this one is no longer going to feature one protagonist. It's going to be two protagonists this time. And it's targeted for some time this year. We're really not sure when it's going to come out.
Yeah, from the trailers, this game looks very, very promising, and I'm excited to play it. I really enjoyed my time with the original Dishonored. I thought that there could be some gameplay improvements. I played that game all stealth, and that was really hard to do. I thought some of the teleporting mechanics could be a little clunky. I really didn't want to engage with the combat. It was really hard to brute force that game, so that's why I kind of played it perfect stealth. But I'm really excited to see what Dishonored 2 turns out to be like. I think this game was kind of a cult classic, and people really dug it, and I don't think enough people really got to enjoy it.
I don't think it was a cult classic per se. I think it was very successful, especially because it got a definitive edition release with all the DLC packed in on newer consoles. And I bought it for PS4 because I still haven't played it yet, and I can't wait to check it out, especially given that this second one is coming out. But to be honest with you, I absolutely hate playing any video game using a perfect stealth playthrough. So I hope they keep that option for the kicking down doors and to keep that available for people who don't want to engage in the stealth, that just want to engage in the first person action aspects of it. So hopefully they keep that in. All right, and speaking of kicking down doors, this is a huge game that a lot of footage was teased at E3 this past summer. Doom. This is a full reboot of the first-person shooter classic, scheduled for sometime this year. We don't know yet. For PS4, Xbox One, and PC. And this one, there's really an emphasis on speed because they're trying to compete in the same space that some similar modern shooters like Call of Duty and Battlefield are occupying now. So it's different. It's not as dark. It looks very colorful, which in Doom's case is, it can be a hit or miss given the history of what Doom really is.
Right. The original looked intentionally drab. It was very satanic. I really liked that aesthetic of Doom. Doom and Doom 2 and all the Doom games that kind of fell after that were very classic in that regard. And this one seems to be a little more colorful. They've showed off some multiplayer also. There's going to be a multiplayer mode that showed off power-ups that will let you transform into one of Doom's many iconic monsters. I'm really not sure how that might play out. If it turns out to be like an Evolve situation where it's a 1 versus 4 asymmetric type thing, it may go the way of Evolve, which means nobody will play it. I'm very curious to see what this game will be like. But for me, I think this is a game that spells sale. Wait for a sale.
Well, this game is going to live and die by how smoothly it runs. If it doesn't run at a stable 60 frames per second, people are going to say, oh man, this is id Tech. This is Bethesda. They have all their hands all over this and they can't make it run smoothly. And Doom has to be a visceral, a graphically beautiful game, because if it isn't, it really doesn't hold up compared to other shooters out there. I think games like Wolfenstein, The New Order, I think is a great example of taking an old franchise and making it modern and making it compelling and making a campaign that's worth playing. And if they don't hit those same notes with this Doom, it's going to be a huge miss for me, for sure. And this was a huge, huge hit. This was sort of the indie darling of E3, I would argue. And it's Cuphead. This is a boss rush game, a very difficult platforming style game that you can play as either a single player or you can play cooperatively. Everything is hand-drawn. It looks like the style of those old Disney movies you remember back from like the 1930s to about the 1950s, 1960s. It's so cool, this aesthetic, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it really looks like Steamboat Willie made real. It looks very difficult, looks very fun. I'm eager to check this game out. It's currently being developed for PC and Xbox One, currently targeted for sometime this year. This game has been on my radar for a few E3s now, and I'm really excited to check out when it eventually does come out. I can't wait for Cuphead.
Yeah, we've been saying these past several games, we talked about this episode, we don't know when they're coming out this year, but this is the game I want to know when it comes out because I definitely want to check it out immediately. It's just such a unique take on platforming. It just seems like this sort of bullet hell style boss rush game, and it's something I've never really seen before because the aesthetic style is really what sells it for me. I can't wait to check that out. All right, another blockbuster title. Again, talked about at E3. There was a very short gameplay demo that didn't go so well. They had to actually restart it because it was played live. It's Uncharted 4: A Thief's End. This is a PS4 exclusive, scheduled for April 26, 2016. This was after a delay that was recently announced. And this is said to be the last Uncharted game in the franchise. I really find that hard to believe.
Right. They've shown off some dialogue options in single player, which I'm not sure what you're doing with dialogue options in an Uncharted game. Those games have never had that before. The multiplayer has also been shown off a little bit. Looks like it's going to have some supernatural elements in some of its modes. Those games haven't shied away from being kind of an Indiana Jones style adventure, third-person cover shooter games. And I don't really like the supernatural elements of the Uncharted games. I think when it's kind of a straightforward third-person shooter that's about traversing or, getting in these over-the-top sequences, I think these games are really beautiful. I think they excel when it's really more like a blockbuster movie. I don't like the supernatural elements. That really tends to sour the experience for me.
Well, does that sour the experience for you in games like Tomb Raider, for instance, and even in the more recent Rise of the Tomb Raider?
Yeah, it definitely soured me on the Tomb Raider reboot, and Rise of the Tomb Raider not so much because I think that was a little bit more done a little better story-wise. But in Uncharted, it just didn't seem to fit. They introduced those blue guys at the end of Uncharted 2, and it totally came out of left field. What are you doing? This is set to be the last Uncharted game, also being developed by Naughty Dog. They want to go away from this series. Sony has said that it will be the last Uncharted game, but Uncharted does really well for them, so I'm not sure if that they're willing to let this one just go just yet. Uncharted seems to be being replaced by The Last of Us. We know that there is a hot rumor that there's a Last of Us sequel being developed, and maybe that's where Naughty Dog will go from here.
Yeah, I think that's a good route to take because, again, we talked about Tomb Raider, and Tomb Raider just has not been doing very well commercially. I don't think Square Enix has really like the numbers that have come out of the past 2 games. And I think Naughty Dog is seeing the writing on the wall and saying, well, I think this is the best we're going to get out of the Uncharted series. And for them to remaster Uncharted 1 through 3 in the Nathan Drake collection is a sign of the times. They see, Sony sees these masterpieces from its last generation and, wants to re-release them and wants to bank off of that success. But even in other games like God of War, like these big Sony franchises, these first, I would say, very successful games of the last generation, it's hard to sell those again. Like these new iterations, these sequels are constantly being compared to their previous ones. So it's kind of a risky move for them. So I could see why they would want to move on to some of the more recent IPs, Last of Us being, I think, their best option to go with going forward. Okay, let's go back to indies with The Witness by Jonathan Blow. This is the guy responsible for Braid, one of my favorite puzzle platformer games back in the old days of Xbox Live, Summer of Arcade. Love that stuff. This is an interesting game because it's almost like a throwback to Myst or Riven, if you remember those games back in the day. These were these puzzle adventure games that were really immersive, put you in this world, and it's seemingly with no instruction, and you have to really, really explore the environment to really get the most out of the game. This is scheduled for this month, actually, January 26th, 2016. Only a limited amount of people have seen this game for what it is so far.
Yeah, it's being developed for PC and PS4. There will be a later iOS version that will come out. Jonathan Blow has said that there will be somewhere around 650 puzzles in the game. For me, I'm not really sure how to feel about this title. I think Braid was a really cool game back in its day. I'm not sold on the Myst-style gameplay. Taylor, I know you can really speak to those kinds of games because I think those are more up your alley. Are you excited for The Witness at all?
Absolutely. Even though he's only made one game, Jonathan Blow has already proven himself, in my eyes, that he understands what it means to make a great puzzle game with kind of an old school feel to it. Braid had this like hand-colored graphic style to it, and it was just gorgeous and almost calming to an extent. And The Witness, I think, is also along that same vein, especially because he knows he's making like a modern Myst style game that's very colorful. And this is a kind of game that can take, let's say, between, I don't know, if I had to ballpark it, 20 to 50 hours to complete. He's gone on the record and saying, like, well, some people are going to complete it pretty quickly, and some people are going to struggle and explore and trying to solve all the puzzles in the world. They're not going to know how to advance, and they're going to be the ones that really experience all the game, everything that the game has to offer, all the puzzles that are really out there. So I'm really excited to check it out because I can get lost in these style of games because that certainly I did with Myst back in the day. Loved it. All right, this is a handheld title. Let's move on to Mario and Luigi Paper Jam. This is kind of a mix between the Mario and Luigi series and the Paper Mario series, which on paper sounds excellent, except if you can remember Paper Mario Sticker Star from 3DS, which is a pretty disappointing title. Not a good entry in that series. And I hope it's more Mario and Luigi and less Paper Mario.
To me, that really is sad news. I think Mario & Luigi has been a really fantastic portable franchise. All the Mario & Luigi games, starting from Superstar Saga all the way to Bowser's Inside Story to Dream Team, those games have been really fantastic and, more importantly, really, really funny. And for them to go back on Paper Mario is kind of an iffy thing because the Paper Mario series hasn't done well in the past few years. Look for this game this month, January 22nd of this year. I think it looks promising, but we'll see when it comes out.
Yeah, I'm going to wait and see with this kind of game because you summed it up. Mario and Luigi, it has great writing, great gameplay. So that's the promising part. It's the Paper Mario part that's kind of dicey. All right, speaking of RPGs, I love this series. Star Ocean has a new entry. It's called Star Ocean Integrity and Faithlessness. Really, that's a mouthful. Coming out of Japan, this is a PS4 exclusive JRPG. taking place sometime between the second and third games, story-wise. This is the 5th mainline Star Ocean game. Imagine that. The overall 9th Star Ocean game. I don't think all of those have come out here in the West. And we don't know when it's going to come out this year, though.
Yeah, it's supposedly set for 2016, but we've seen very little on this game. Taylor and I are huge fans of the Star Ocean series. They're very hardcore JRPGs with a lot of fun crafting mechanics, a lot of fun mini games, and I really like this series. But the past few that have released here in the West on the 360 have been kind of terrible, have had really some hammy voice acting that a lot of recent JRPGs have had. And I hope they go back to the style of the second game, because that was really my favorite in the franchise.
Yeah, the second story was excellent. Love that. The gameplay, like the battle system, is this active battle system where you're running around a battlefield, almost kind of like Kingdom Hearts to an extent, although you're not doing as many aerials, but a lot of it involves juggling. Visually, it's a great looking game. It's certainly a departure from like the typical turn-based JRPG you would expect, and that's what appeals to me about these games. And hopefully they take a note from that book. What was the last Star Ocean called? The one that you talked about from 360? Do you remember the subtitle for that one?
No, I don't. It was shitty. The Last Ocean. Star Ocean, The Last Ocean? No.
The Last Hope.
Yeah, Star Ocean The Last Hope was really, really terrible, really grinded my gears. They even released an international edition on PS3 that really didn't add much to the already very, let's just say, crappy game that didn't do Star Ocean justice. I hope Integrity and Faithlessness does this franchise very well.
Yeah, and if you want to go back and play some of the older Star Ocean games, it's back on PS1, but they also had PSP re-releases of the first and second ones. I think it was like First Departure and Second Evolution were those titles, and those are worth it. Those are very solid Star Ocean games, and can't wait to check this out sometime this year, hopefully. Okay, back to this game has been teased all over the place at E3, even as far back as 2014. No Man's Sky has been a much hyped space exploration game. It seems to be, what is it, randomly generated, procedurally generated? I never know the difference. But this is set for release in June this year. But again, this has sort of been a victim of many delays. And that's okay. You want games to be perfected before they come out, not that they're bug-ridden. And especially with something as big of a scope as No Man's Sky.
Yeah, this game has been really hyped up. I've bought into it. The game now has combat and supposedly a wanted system a la Grand Theft Auto, which I'm not sure that it needed. I really like space games, and this game has a very interesting and distinctive art style. Has shown up on several TV shows, such as Colbert, and I'm very excited for No Man's Sky, but it just needs to come out already. Hopefully by the time it comes out in June of 2016, or according to developers, it'll ship when it's done, whenever that is. I hope this game really lives up to all the promises it's trying to sell us on.
Yeah, it has this kind of like minimalist, polygonal, but very colorful art style to it. And it's space exploration in the sense that you're in a ship and you're traveling to all these different planets, these universes, these systems, but you can also land on the planets and see all the unique wildlife on each individual planet. And every planet has a supposedly unique environment, resources, what have you. No two planets are the same, and that's what's selling it for a lot of people. Like, it's just this huge, expansive game, and that you can get lost in its universe. So, let's see if it actually will come out this June. And didn't he say it was going to come out on PlayStation VR? It seems tailor-made for VR.
Hopefully. I'm unsure about that news.
Okay. All right, moving on to Dark Souls 3. Ryan, you can talk all about this one.
Yes, this is the third Dark Souls game, fourth if you're counting Souls games, and fifth if you're counting Bloodborne. Coming out for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. Currently set for April 12th of this year. If you're not familiar with Dark Souls, you've been living under a rock. It's an action RPG, very, very...
brutally hard. I think those are the words you're looking for.
Yes, brutally hard. The mechanics are supposedly this time going to take some cues from Bloodborne while staying true to the Dark Souls style gameplay that fans are really used to. So, translated, shields and magic will be returning. They did not have those in Bloodborne. They do have those in Dark Souls games. And on top of it, they're going to add stances on top of weapon styles. So you might have one stance in while you're fighting with a sword and shield that might be more powerful, that might be more defensive. Maybe you're holding a mace or a staff, and the stances will add different kind of moves. They said that they're going to kind of make it a more combo-based system, which Dark Souls hasn't really been. But I think it's definitely an interesting direction for this franchise to take.
What compels people to actually play these games? It just seems like punishment.
It is punishing. I think the Dark Souls games have been kind of made easier over time. I think Bloodborne was probably the easiest Dark Souls style game to be released so far. I think it's kind of harking back to an era when games were harder. It's kind of a community based, experience where you don't really know what's going on in the story. You kind of have to piece it all together. The mechanics don't really make a lot of sense. They don't telegraph a lot of the stuff. There is an instruction booklet. You can't look things up. And I think that really speaks to a kind of game that really doesn't exist that often anymore. And I think that's what really sells people on the Dark Souls series. It's definitely sold me. I really enjoy all these games. Although to date, I've never finished one. So maybe Dark Souls 3 will be the first one that I actually finish.
Hopefully. Okay. We've got a huge list to keep going through. So let's talk about Fire Emblem Fates. This is a three-pronged release. There are three separate games, Birthright, Conquest, Revelation, and you can sort of buy bundles as well. Scheduled for release this February with multiple storylines, a base-building mechanic that was not present in the past Fire Emblem games. This is the latest entry. Looking forward to playing more of this grid-based tactics RPG.
I really liked Fire Emblem Awakening, and I think the Fire Emblem games have kind of taken the place of Advance Wars as far as tactical games on handhelds. And I'm really looking forward to this. I'm a little unsure about this three-pronged way they're developing this game. It's going to be three different facets of the same story. Birthright, you're going to play on one side. Conquest, you'll be playing on the other. And Revelation is kind of a combination of the two. Story-wise, I'm not sure how that'll play out. But for me, the Fire Emblem games have a convoluted JRPG story anyway. And for me, it's really more about the systems and the characters at play.
Right. Also brutally difficult with the permadeath. Similar to what we were talking about before with the Soul Styles games. This is a game we're not expecting to be as difficult because it's back to its Banjo-Kazooie roots. It's Yooka-Laylee, which was kickstarted back, what was it, like last year? Anyway, it's scheduled for release this October, and it's made by former Rare developers. So a lot to live up to. We have high expectations for this game because Banjo-Kazooie as a franchise, even with nuts and bolts, has been an excellent series.
I will say at the same time that character action platform games like Banjo-Kazooie haven't really been a thing since the N64 days. Those games that genre went kind of away for a while, and Yooka-Laylee has proved so far by being kickstarted that there's really a hunger out there for this kind of game, and we'll see when it comes out if it's any good. Collect games where you collect a lot of things, like in Assassin's Creed. I never finish all of that. I never get 100% completion because there's just so much to collect. And I think the last time I 100%ed a game like that was maybe Donkey Kong 64, which is a really old game now. And I think Yooka-Laylee is going to have that same kind of cheeky, Rare type humor, like with characters like Trouser Snake, ha 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 ha. I think Yooka-Laylee is kind of taking the spirit of Pixar style movies and making it into a fun video game that we'll see if it turns out to be very good.
Yeah, it's going to be sold on its charm, and I don't think people are looking for like a serious hardcore game here. They're looking for something that's easy to pick up and play, and to go back to that similar style of Banjo-Kazooie, Super Mario 64, Donkey Kong 64 platforming. People really still like those games a whole lot. Okay, we talked about a lot of Kickstarted campaigns so far, but this one had a terrible marketing campaign ahead of it. Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Ryan, why don't you give some context about what happened there?
Sure, there was an augment your pre-order campaign where you could give the developers some money for a pre-order, and depending on the amount of money that you gave, you could get the game with a game with a collector's edition, or the game like 5 days early, as opposed to when everybody else would get it. That was really kind of a negative thing that people did not enjoy, and because of all the negative feedback, they decided to just make it a regular pre-order campaign. However, I will say that I think a lot of people are interested in this. Deus Ex Human Revolution was a very popular stealth action game released a few years ago. This game is currently scheduled for August 23rd of this year. And I played the Deus Ex Human Revolution as a stealth player, which made the boss battles really difficult for me. The boss battles were way not balanced. And I really liked some of the systems in those games, but man alive, the combat was not great. The combat tends to be this like third-person shooter style game. They've said that the boss battles will be better for this title.
And yet another game that was talked about. It was a surprise reveal at E3 this past summer. The Last Guardian. This was in development purgatory for a long time, and Sony was very excited to reveal this at E3 because it's finally coming out. Scheduled this year, we don't know a definitive date yet. It is a PS4 exclusive, and it's a spiritual successor to Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, which were critically acclaimed games, but not commercially successful. And this one, though, seems to have a huge hype train behind it.
You know, I really love the art style of Ico and Shadow of the Colossus, but man, I didn't like playing those games at all. And I know that I'm probably in the minority on that one, but The Last Guardian looks to be another game in that shadow. And if that's the case, I think I'm going to wait on a sale. We don't know how The Last Guardian is going to play, other than maybe it'll have some puzzles and it'll have this dog-bird thing that you're going to have as an AI partner. So we'll see how The Last Guardian turns out.
Yeah, it's a third-person action platformer that has a lot of puzzles. Seems similar to like a Tomb Raider, where you're moving about the environment to open up a new path into the next area. But I think what appeals to a lot of people is the art style. I mean, it was gorgeous. That teaser trailer, actually, I should say it wasn't a teaser trailer, it was a gameplay trailer. It really showcased the art direction, and I thought it looked fantastic. So it's all these pastel colors, and it has this sort of like classic feel to it. I can't even describe it. You have to check it out. Watch it for yourself. And you could definitely see its roots where these same developers have carried over the art style from Ico and Shadow of the Colossus. All right, we really don't know if this game is going to come out this year, although we do know that more news is coming about Zelda Wii U, and that's the working title. It's not the final one by Nintendo. This one is supposedly, by rumor, going to be a truly open-world game for the Wii U.
Yeah, the art looks very fantastic, very, very different from the Zelda games. The open world is said to be so expansive that it's kind of hitting the hardware limit for Wii U, which says to me that it's either going to be the last game that will come out for the Wii U, or it'll be a crossover title in which there will be a Wii U version and a NX version. But that's just rumored. We don't know yet. And again, no gameplay has really been shown for that game yet. I have a hard time believing it'll come out this year, but for me, Zelda is a really storied franchise that hasn't had a very good game in quite some time. I think for me, the last Zelda game that really did it for me was A Link Between Worlds, and that was a handheld title building off of A Link to Super Nintendo Classic, A Link to the Past. And I think this game is going to have to really bowl me over to really get me to play it.
It's possible that, given at this point, that it's might be like the Twilight Princess of this generation, where it crossed over onto two different platforms. Like at the end of GameCube's life cycle, that's when it was released on GameCube and Wii, and we might see that this game is like a launch title for the NX, but it's also on the Wii U. So maybe that's why they're delaying its announcement for so long. Nintendo is trying to keep all its secrets for now, but I know a lot of people are clamoring for more news about that because this is a beloved franchise. Can't wait to hear more news about it. And speaking of beloved franchises, we want to hear more about Mass Effect Andromeda. We don't know much about this game because we haven't seen any gameplay footage. This is scheduled for the fourth quarter of this year, so very late for PS4, Xbox One, and PC. It will have multiplayer, which is good news because I loved what Mass Effect 3 had. And apparently the Mako, that vehicle from Mass Effect 1, is returning, and it's running on Frostbite's Engine 3, the same one used for Battlefield 4 by EA.
Yeah, this game isn't going to have the Shepard storyline continuity, which I think is a good thing. I think Shepard's story ended however you felt about that at the end of Mass Effect 3. And we don't have any other details on this game, but I hope we do get some more information, some more gameplay footage. So far, all we've seen is concept art. But Mass Effect was probably one of my favorite franchises from the last generation, and hopefully they'll build on that success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope the multiplayer isn't full of the like BS microtransactions. And Mass Effect 3 kind of teetered. It was sort of on the verge of being gross because you're paying for a full retail product, $60 for a brand new game, and now you're having to pay more, like pay to win situation. And hopefully it's minimal. It doesn't, the multiplayer doesn't really bank off of that situation. So I can't wait to check it out. All right, and Quantum Break, another sort of spiritual successor, right, to Alan Wake, wouldn't you say? This is scheduled for April 5th. We've seen gameplay footage of it, teased quite a bit. And this one's an Xbox One exclusive. It's a third-person shooter, but has a lot of neat mechanics, kind of like if you've ever played Singularity, where you have time-bending mechanics and bullet time, kind of like a Max Payne.
Yeah, it supposedly has a TV show-like aesthetic. They've been really hyping it up. The game looks beautiful from what we've seen so far. They are also going to have some cross-media with this. There's said to be a digital series paired with the game that's, quote, how you play the game impacts the show, and the show informs how you play the game, end quote. Games that tend to tie into TV shows don't have a great track record, but I think if any developer is going to do it, Remedy has been very successful with Alan Wake and Max Payne, both which kind of had really great fake TV shows implemented in that. In the case of Alan Wake, that game had a episode-like structure that I thought really did well for itself. And I'm excited for Quantum Break. I'm a little nervous that it's a third-person shooter in the style of Singularity. I wasn't a big fan of Singularity. I was a bigger fan of Max Payne. So I think if they go in the more noir direction, it'll be better for me.
Yeah, the last game to have this like TV video game weird tie-in was Defiance, and we all know how that did. It did not go well. I don't even know if that TV show is still on Sci-Fi, but Quantum Break, it's an interesting experiment. We have this sort of convergence of new media between video games, TV, and movies, and now all of them are starting to blend together, and it hasn't been done well yet, and we'll see if this is the start of something bigger in the industry. All right, man, it seems like we've been talking for a long time about these games, and we still have a lot to go, so let's kind of breeze through some of these last ones. Horizon Zero Dawn, this was teased at E3. Gameplay footage seems very promising. It's a PS4 exclusive by the developers of Killzone. It's a third-person RPG. Seems like a futuristic Monster Hunter. Ryan, what's your quick take on?
This looks like Monster Hunter with robotic dinosaurs. Has a female protagonist. I'm really excited to play it. I really like Monster Hunter style games. And for a big budget PS4 title, looks very promising so far.
Okay, moving right along, Persona 5. Persona 4 The Golden was an excellent title on Vita, and I can't wait for this game. It's an RPG set sometime this year. We don't have a definitive date. just like a lot of other stuff we've been talking about. But this one has really cool art. Some trailers have come out about it, and it looks like this time you're going to be playing as a team of thieves. And there's no real crossover, just like the Final Fantasy tradition of existing characters in this game. It's a brand new story.
Right, the Persona games are always part dungeon crawler, part dating sim, and Persona 5 looks to be more of the same while improving upon that gameplay in different ways. Really looking forward to what will be shown of that game moving forward.
I'm really excited to see what's being shown of Mirror's Edge Catalyst, who's a huge fan of the last game. This is, of course, its sequel. This is scheduled for May 24th for PC, PS4, Xbox One. Being published by EA, and there's been a few delays so far, but and they've claimed that it's really just to improve the traversal gameplay that we love about Mirror's Edge. This parkour style, beautiful colors. It's just I loved how it played before. The controls were the best parkour game I've ever played, and I hope they continue to build on that.
I hope they improve the gunplay. I hope they take out guns from that game, because once Mirror's Edge had guns in it, it totally lost its power over me. That game is really about fluid motion and how fast you can move through those really colorful, really dynamic levels.
Agreed. Guess what? We have to go back to games that were teased at E3. For Honor, brand new franchise by Ubisoft. This is their take on Dynasty Warriors, but kind of during like the medieval period, and it seems to be like this co-op game that has online functionality. There's no release date outside of this year, but it's being developed for PS4, Xbox One, PC. It seems to be heavily focused on like these one-on-one battles, this sword play that seems to be very visceral, very violent, very medieval.
I think for me, if this game is a cross between Dynasty Warriors and Chivalry Medieval Warfare, I think it'll be a big success. If not, it'll just be another Dynasty Warrior style game that will fall by the wayside. An imitator, not a great improver.
Yeah, a lot of these games we talked about are sequels, and this is no different. Gears of War 4. This is a third-person cover-based shooter that we all know about that series, scheduled for the end of this year. Again, no definitive date. It's an Xbox One exclusive for now, but that's weird given that it was the Ultimate Edition that was released recently was available on Xbox One and PC. So maybe a PC release will come out later on down the line.
Man, Ultimate Edition really soured my view on the Gears of War franchise, which I was really previously a big fan of. So I hope Gears of War 4 kind of moves away from the crappiness of that direction. I hope they improve the lag of the multiplayer, and it stops being such a shotgun-focused style game. The shotguns in that game are not well balanced at all.
Yeah, and Gears of War Judgment was kind of a miss for me too. So I hope this is the next best entry in that series, along with Street Fighter V, because Street Fighter 4 set a really high bar for fighting games, scheduled for February 16th, coming out very soon for PC, PS4, Linux even. It's going to have cross-platform multiplayer, 16 characters at launch with 6 additional DLC characters planned, which can be unlocked with in-game currency that you earn by playing or real money, so there are going to be microtransactions baked into this game. Here's a game that a lot of people were clamoring for, Res Infinite. This is a PS4 exclusive with PlayStation VR support, and it was shown with an amazing crowd reaction at PlayStation Experience. There's no set date, but it's a port of a cult classic, the rail shooter at music rhythm game Res. Man, this seemed really cool because the VR also was demoed with this like a force feedback vest that lit up, and it seems like an incredible game, like the perfect experience for VR.
To me, this seems like a launch title for the PlayStation VR headset, and hopefully it'll come out day and date with that, and will hopefully prove why that hardware matters.
All right, coming down the home stretch, a few games left. Gravity Rush 2. This is a sequel to the Vita launch title, Gravity Rush, which is also being remastered for PS4. This is scheduled this year. Again, no definitive date. It's going to have an AI-controlled partner and style changes to change the weight and gravity of the heroine, the protagonist that you play as, Kat. And the combat is said to be improved from the original game, but I really enjoyed Gravity Rush 1.
I never finished the original Gravity Rush, but I'm interested to see what this game will be like. I think this game sold a lot of PS Vitas when it wasn't expecting to, and maybe it'll move some PS4s also.
Right. It's interesting gameplay because you're floating around and it controlled very well on Vita. You're like suspended in midair and can fly and zoom in. And it was just a really cool take on this like third person action adventure game. And that's what it appealed to me. And I believe, if I recall correctly, this was one of the first PS Plus free games to be offered. So that's how I got interested in that game. All right, let's go back to talking about PlayStation VR and games at a PlayStation Experience. 100-foot robot golf. This was a surprise that nobody expected. This is for PS4 and PlayStation VR, which makes it very interesting. It's an indie game being developed by No Goblin, who was responsible for Roundabout, which is a very quirky title. This one, no different, very quirky. And this is a game where you're basically playing as these huge mecha Gundam style mechs, like running around like a city playing golf. Like it just seems like a ridiculous premise. And it seems pretty cool because they've already announced that the features include like a solo campaign, up to 4 players split screen, or online. Very frantic, like this real-time destruction of buildings, the city around you, and fighting other mechs, other players as they're playing golf. Or also there's this classic turn-based golf action. So if you want to go slower pace, you can also play golf as it is intended. And a lot of customization with the rule sets. And it's really nice to see games like this one being announced and getting a great reaction. And these are games that really don't take themselves too seriously. And that's what appeals to me about 100-foot robot golf.
Plus, there hasn't been a really good golf game in a very long time, probably since Mario Golf. And I think people are really looking for more arcadey style sports games these days. And 100-foot robot golf seems to be a sports game in that mold.
All right, well, that was a huge list, and that's it for today's episode. If you liked and or hated our show, please subscribe and review us on iTunes and Stitcher. Please let us know what you think. Reviews are very helpful for us. Please take the couple minutes to do it. It's very helpful for our show.
All of our episodes can also be heard on our site, which is 1pvs2p.com, or on your favorite podcasting app. You can also subscribe through RSS by clicking on our site's sidebar button. And all of the games that we talked about for the most anticipated games for this year have been posted at the link in the show notes.
Like us on Facebook, facebook.com/1pvs2p on our page, or follow us on Twitter at 1pvs2p_podcast. We're very active there. We also want to thank Phonetic Hero, as always, for the use of his songs for our show. They're part of the compilation project Chiptunes Equals Win. Happy New Year!